Thank you for budgeting time for CNN 10. I'm Carl Azus, and budgeting is the first topic we're tackling this Tuesday. In Washington, D.C., President Donald Trump has released his budget proposal for the year 2020. The government's budget involves trillions of dollars. The vast majority of its revenue comes from taxes. The budget's a blueprint for how the government plans to spend that and what the difference is between its revenue and expenditure. For years, under Republican and Democratic administrations, the government has spent much more money than it takes in. President Trump's proposal includes reductions in what the government plans to spend, $2.7 trillion in cuts to most federal agencies. The White House says it's the biggest spending reduction in presidential history. But it would still take 15 years under this plan for the budget to balance, meaning that what the government spends is equal to what it takes in. According to TheHill.com, the Environmental Protection Agency, the State Department, Housing and Urban Development, and federal agriculture and education departments would all see reductions in their funding, while defense spending would increase, and programs that help veterans, modernize government technology, and fight the nation's opioid epidemic would receive more money. The budget proposal sets aside $8.6 billion for border security. That includes the wall or barrier the president has promised to build between the U.S. and Mexico. That's something that's generally supported by Republicans who control the Senate. They say the president's proposal has no surprises and that it's a good first step in the budgetary process. A border wall is generally opposed by Democrats who control the House of Representatives. They say the president's proposal is irresponsible and that it has no chance of passing in the House. No president's budget has ever been adopted by Congress, though. It shows a president's priorities for where the money should go, but because Congress controls the purse strings, the two chambers could debate, change, and revise the plan for months before a compromise is sent to the president's desk. To South America now. In the midst of massive protests, political upheaval, and skyrocketing inflation, the struggles of many Venezuelans recently got worse when the power went out. 70% of Venezuela has been without electricity at some point since last week. As the country's economic crisis has gotten worse, blackouts have become increasingly common. But one this big is rare. President Nicolas Maduro said the U.S. was behind it. He blames America for sabotaging Venezuela's network through a cyber attack. Juan Guaido, who's declared himself the new leader of Venezuela, says that's nonsense because the country's main power plant isn't online. He and the U.S. say the, quote, incompetence of Maduro's government is to blame. Both Venezuelan leaders have called for rallies in the nation's capital.
Well, the piece of good news comes from the lights that you see behind me. It seems that this city, this country is just beginning to recover, but the toll it has taken already in a country crippled by acute shortages of food, of medicine, and now this. We have heard stories of so many people just struggling to survive, especially in those hospitals that were already facing so much adversity. Today, we heard from many people who said, look, the power must come back on. We are running out of everything. We have spoiled food in our homes and no way to really figure out how to get more food and, quite frankly, the money to get more food into our homes. Right now, the government has said that Monday, again, everyone should stay home. Schools, businesses, the government is closed. People, again, will continue to try and recover. Politically, the opposition still continues to say this was mismanagement on the government side. President Maduro, though, continuing to hold to his line, saying that this was indeed sabotage. One thing is for sure, the hydro system, the electricity system in this country is in dire need of repair. And in the middle of a drought, Venezuelans know that while this blackout may be over for now, or at least beginning to be over, they know that they risk more blackouts to come and, of course, more struggles. Paula Newton, CNN, Caracas.
10-second trivia. Which of these private spaceflight companies was launched first? Virgin Galactic, SpaceX, Blue Origin, or Bigelow Aerospace? These companies are listed in order from the youngest to the oldest, with Bigelow having been launched first in 1999. It's been almost 8 years since a manned mission to space took off from U.S. soil. American astronauts traveling to the International Space Station have taken a seat aboard Russia's Soyuz spacecraft, which cost the U.S. $81 million per person per launch. That could soon change, though. As early as this summer, private companies like SpaceX, which receives billions in funding from the U.S. government, could soon offer trips to the ISS. Those would cost $58 million per seat. If and when that becomes a reality, though, organizations other than NASA might be willing to pay to send people up there, and the space station is only really built for 6 at a time. So another private company is joining the growing field of those looking to provide space solutions.
Meet Robert Bigelow, a real estate developer who made his fortune building a chain of low-cost motels. Now, he's looking to grow his real estate empire off Earth.
I mean, to imagine floating around in here, do you envision tourists also inhabiting these?
Absolutely.
He believes his company, Bigelow Aerospace, may have the solution to our space housing problem: expandable habitats.
All of this at one point, when it's first launched, is going to be compacted into a really small space and then expand into this massive structure.
Right, so it's squeezing a core, and then expansion takes place around that core, and now you have the shape of your spacecraft.
How does this thing actually expand once it's launched into space?
We just pump in gas.
What kind of gas?
Nitrogen and oxygen.
Because these habitats start out deflated and small, it makes them easier and cheaper to launch than metal structures.
The metal alternatives for the ISS have run into several billions of dollars to produce a habitat in 4 or 5 years of construction.
You can do it faster and cheaper, you say?
Absolutely.
It's not just cheaper. He says the 18-inch walls of his habitats will better protect us from space debris and radiation. Once it expands, the B330 prototype has the same volume as a small 3-bedroom house, and their largest model, the Olympus, is twice the size of the International Space Station.
What are these systems going to be used for? I mean, is this a space hotel? Is this going to be a space station?
What we're doing is trying to create a sort of generic facility, a habitat. We want to be able to entertain entities, companies, space agencies.
What you're describing sounds like a landlord.
It is. It basically is.
And the going rate to lease 110 cubic meters of volume for 60 days? $25 million. That may sound pricey, but that's still a fraction of what it costs now. And that's because there are only 2 habitable locations off Earth: the International Space Station and China's space station.
Up to now, space is characterized mostly by nations.
Right.
Being able to only be the ones to do various kinds of things. And it's been prohibitively expensive. We're trying to attack both of those things.
And it's that belief in the impossible that drove Bigelow to pursue his design.
10, 9.
Because the technology behind his inflatables is something NASA started toying with in the 60s. They dropped the idea because the materials they were using weren't strong enough.
We're trying to size our ecosystems for 6 people as a max.
But Bigelow saw promise. He licensed the technology from NASA in the 90s and started his aerospace company.
You've sunk about $200 million of your own money into this.
Actually, 275, but who's counting?
Why sink all this money into this seemingly impossible task?
We don't think it's impossible. That's the first premise, is because if we did, we wouldn't attempt it. We just think it's difficult.
This isn't just an idea. His company has already sent 2 prototypes into orbit, and they have a contract with NASA to test one of its habitats on the ISS.
We're addicted to that direction of space and doing whatever we can.
To get us there.
Yeah.
And keep us there.
Right.
The car company that brought the world the Beetle, also known as the Bug, may soon bring it the Buggy. The ID Buggy, with ID reportedly standing for iconic design. It's just a concept at this point, but it created a buzz, get it, at the Geneva International Motor Show last week. And Volkswagen says it might actually produce the electric dune buggy in small numbers as a way of attracting attention to VW's electric cars. It only seats 2, it only has 2 doors, and while it made some fans bug-eyed, others will want to bug out when they begin to adjust their compound eyes to that bug-garish shade of green. Does it bug you? Or have you been bitten by the bug of curiosity and want to larva your Beetle behind and metamorph a downsize to a wingless taxi? I'm Carl Azus for CNN.